Hey,
Yay,
here we go.
So yeah, we'll just give time, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know how we do, always, break the ice and catch up or whatever and figure out what makes sense and what doesn't, man. So how your kids doing, man? How your family doing?
Yeah, man, family's great, man. It's I tell people I'm in the fourth stage of parenting, a fourth stage of empty nesting. And it's a stage that I never met any of my elders who reached that stage intact, or
Mm-hmm.
if they reached that stage, they went back to stage one or two because either they were raising grandkids, or they start investing in the grandkids. And
Yeah.
I don't have any grandkids, so and the
Mm-hmm.
fourth stage of parenting or empty nesting is, well, let's say empty nesting. The first stage when they leave home for college,
Okay.
or whatever that looks like, vocation school, whatever. Uh, Second, is when they get out of that and they come home, they grown, they doing grown folk stuff, but they still come borrow your pots and pans. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Stage three is when they move out, but they still kind of close by. And stage four is when they all off your insurance. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
you're no longer responsible. They got their own benefits. And some people reach stage four by their child going to the military. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's actually, to me, that's the quickest way to stage four. But what I realized about people who enlist in the military, like me and like you, we don't come from resources. We don't come from where our parents could give us a down payment or provide for us in a pandemic. We normally join the military out of a necessity, to get some benefits, some economic benefits, and to get out of a situation that went bad for a lot of our peers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so,
Mm-hmm.
although like you, I really value my time in the military. I believe the military set me up for lifelong success. I go as far as saying the military saved my life. But that wasn't necessarily what was my call for my children. I served so they didn't have to, per se.
Yeah. Man, you know, um, I've been really like forming an ideology around what my platform is going to be, and then I start coming up with different combinations of words that that meant the right things when they were spoken and kind of spoke for itself and defined itself. And when I started thinking about you know how I wanted to present accountable masculinity, I just started looking within my network,
Yeah.
and like there's a lot of valid examples, and then you one of those. So I wanted to come up with an idea of how I wanted to elevate, what I'm saying, my brothers and get them a chance to get they flowers, and most of the times, we give each other our flowers when we having conversations anyway, right?
Right. Right.
And but we wind up getting torn between whatever obligations we have. You got a lot of
Hmm.
people that depend on you. I got a lot of people that depend on me. um you know this is one of those spaces where I always say this isn't the thing that I'm even good at. This is the thing that I'm learning how to do. But like you're actually good at this, and you've put you've planted seeds in my mental over the years about what I needed to do to like streamline what I had going on, and I've taken my cues off of you and kind of measured myself, what I'm saying, against that, because one thing you don't want to do is be overwhelmed by something that that you can control if you got the right situation, right? So
Right.
in this space where you in close proximity to a lot of people, that can move things around very quickly, what do you do to avoid getting overwhelmed with opportunity? Because isn't it crazy that you got a lot of first world problems now, no matter how you slice
Yeah, that is man. I had someone tell me one time that options was the enemy of focus, and
options with the enemy of focus?
yeah, and so now if you're trying to focus, let's, I always go back and try to use the example. I'm looking at my son right now, who's somewhere in Greece on a cruise, working as a professional musician. And he has no Netflix, no YouTube, very spotty, like dial-up style internet. WhatsApp is the only thing he can use. And the level of focus he has on his music, he told me, Dad, I've never been better as a drummer, right? He's practicing 4 or 5 hours a day on his own because they only have 2 shows a week. He's already lost 30 pounds because the food choices are better. And he's living like it's 1994, right? But when he's home, he has Netflix, Pornhub, you know what I'm saying, DoorDash,
Yeah.
and then whatever Tinder, swipe left, swipe right. And so the amount of options that a good-looking, professional, popular guy has can really be detrimental to development, long-term development of his career. And that's why I believe I see a lot of young people kind of just wanting it really fast and running in place. I look at you and your multiple seasons that I've known you through. I knew you through the bouncy house season. I knew you through the contracting season. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I know you through the real estate season. And you've been able to focus because of what you may have learned in the military, or even what you learned growing up, not having access to the internet, having to go to the library, not having Netflix, having to go to Blockbuster Video, and just realizing that the lack of options makes us very resourceful.
Makes you very creative.
And very creative. I'm addicted to this not new, it's new to me, a TV show. And let me see if I can find the name of it, because there's a couple. And I sat there and I watched, like, how you get on a show and you fall asleep on it?
Yeah.
That's what it was called. You got to watch it, Mysteries of the Abandoned. And basically, it talks about strategies that the ancients used. Maybe if it was build the pyramids, how did they build these pyramids? How did they cut these stones? And then they try to recreate that, or even strategies of how to stop people like Napoleon from overrunning you.
Okay.
And
Got it.
or how do you get water from this river that's 150 miles away to this place that you want to live? And these ancient aqueducts that they built that took 17 and 20 and 25 years, even the Great Wall of China, being built over several hundred years. And just the ingenuity that you have. And you know what? Who has the most ingenuitive, if that's the word, people I have meet along the way are people who go to prison.
Man,
right?
Look, for real.
Yeah. Get them options taken away. And man, they learn how to shave. They learn how to make a good hot plate, or what they call a spread. They learn how to, they become seamstress. They learn how to tattoo with.
Yeah, they got to tap in. Yep, they got to get.
Yeah, they got to get creative.
They got to get creative. You know what I'm saying? So,
yeah,
man, like right now, I got an example of the show. I went and found the IMDb. I'm kind of just letting it sit up here when I get ready to run it or whatever. So you can kind of like watch the show, a minute 30 clip of it or something. But I'll come back to it.
yeah.
But I really wanted to give you this opportunity to let people know who you are. Honestly, like you like the most known unknown guy that, and I've watched you in many seasons, go from being behind the camera to being, like visible backstage, where, we've had conversations where people start to recognize you from previous work where you went from behind the camera to putting other people behind the camera now, right?
Right.
Trying to take advantage of the network that you've nurtured, participated in, and now you got to benefit from it. Like, of course, you've always benefited from things that you participate in, but like now it's really time to cash in on the investment of your efforts. So as a man that's like you were talking about your son, you've had your hand actively in raising all your kids. They all successful, and doing their own thing. How to me, you fit the definition of accountable masculinity. You know what I'm saying?
Gotcha.
You do what was meant to be done. You understand the principles. Like you exhibit these things without anybody having to tell you. You know, like um, for instance, like rule one is men focus on men, and you just gave a scenario where your son is out, like on a cruise ship as a professional musician, having a being able to dedicate 6 hours a day, and then him not being told to go do that. So he
Right.
had to get that from somewhere, instinct wise.
Right.
So the importance of focus. Then number two, we don't argue. Specifically, we don't argue with women, but we don't argue in
Right.
general because that energy never results in anything unless it depends on the origin of the argument. You know what I'm saying? Is it a
Yeah.
disagreement, or is it, is it a disagreement over philosophy, or is it intentional disagreement to just stifle a process? It's different. Um,
Well, you know what, man? The question you asked. I've been sitting here, man, and you asked me like, okay, who is Troy? Who is OG?
yeah. Tell me who
And
OG is, man.
it's shifting, man. And I'm in a new season of focusing on me. And as a man, the social construct is I've always put the needs and wants of others in front of me. That was my definition of man. I was provider. I was expected to provide. And if I eked out any happiness in return, okay, good luck. But I was never taught to be selfish with who I was. And so now here I am at B55 in January and learning, still in the learning phase of how to put myself in charge of my life, right? And I learned a lot from you. You say some things, man, and you say them in such a repetitious way that they make sense. And one of them is in regards to like my nephew, right? Or my
Mm-hmm.
wife or my son. And you start off by saying, I afford, or you, OG affords you the opportunity to do XYZ. And that XYZ might not be beneficial to me. Like, my nephew being on my couch and sucking up my oxygen and eating my
Yeah.
food
Yeah.
and being on my phone, I'm
Mm-hmm.
affording him the opportunity to be lazy, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I have to look and say, okay, am I moving this guy forward or am I hindering him, right?
Right.
Um, and having those hard conversations, especially with the women in the Black community, in the family structure, the women's word is at least worth 50%, right? But it takes none of the accountability for um, creating these men that nobody wants, right?
Right.
And so part of what I've had to do with the men in my family and even my daughters, but we're talking about the men right now, is undo the social construct of what Big Mama and Mama allowed. And then the daughters grow to hate that man, if that makes sense. If I didn't go too far off task. And so
Uh
trying to raise masculine men in a feminine world is one of the toughest things that I do, but it's something I've committed to.
word. You know, how was that challenge being with you and your son versus you and your daughters?
Okay, so with the son, me and my son have basically a secret handshake. Um, and meaning that we don't argue in front of his mother, and consequently, we don't even do it in front of the sisters. Because what they started doing was acting like mothers to him because he's 12 years younger than one of them and 4 years the other. So they were acting like um, um, mother figures, the big
Yeah,
sisters.
overprotective.
Yeah, and over controlling. Like, you have to listen to me. And so it was teaching him how to deal with women in this society. And I'll give you an example because everything for me has to be an example. I remember when he was in the ninth grade. No, he was in the 11th grade, and it was time to go to the prom. And he was taking this girl to the prom. They do the promposals now. And he came to me and asked me for $75 for her part of the limousine. And I said, are you dating this girl? You know, I didn't want to be disrespectful and say, are y'all swapping spin or whatever? He's like, no, we're just friends. I said, she has two parents too, right? Like, yes. Okay, well, she needs to ask her father for the money. Well, my wife heard parts of that and said, well, he has to be able to provide and he has to take care of a family. And I'm like, no, he does not.
He going to a
These
prom.
are friends. They're friends going to the prom. And see, what's happening, in my opinion, is the prom has become the substitution for getting engaged. They treat it at the same level because we having a whole bunch of bridal showers. I mean, we having a whole bunch of baby showers, but no bridal showers, right?
Yeah.
And I often wonder why we don't see college graduation parties or proms. Because the higher you go after high school, because most people are going to graduate from high school. And so that's your last level of celebration. When you get your bachelor's, there might be a little turn up, a little liquor. You get your master's, nobody does nothing. And when you get your doctorate, you can't even post your Cash App. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we're going to celebrate at the least common denominator, which is high school. Mm-hmm. Right? And so I'm telling him, son, don't let these women financially haze you. And otherwise, don't be your father. Your father was born in 1968. And so the mistake I think a lot of people make is a lot of their sons, they want to raise them, they want to treat them and teach them how to be like them. Right?
Let me put a pin right there.
Yeah.
Financially hazing. Break that down, please.
So financial hazing is women in our society, and make no mistake, most households in the Black community are ran by women, right? And even when they're not ran by women, they're ran by women. And so, and they like 1950 dating values, but they want 2022 equality, right? and so if you're a man, you're expected to demonstrate your ability to provide, right? But then they withhold wife type stuff, right? When they want to be a wife, they withhold it, but they expect the young man to provide, to buy the meals, to open the doors, to do all those things that my son might have witnessed me do for his mother. Mm-hmm. But I'm explaining to him, son, I am married to your mother, right? Your mother is my wife, and she's been my wife. These women that you're meeting at this level will not be in your life 6 weeks or 6 months from now, right? And so what I did was because my son was making $600 a week at 16 as a professional musician,
right?
And so we came up with a plan where he would spend $100, $50 to $100 a week and save the rest, right? And that lasted him through his first 2 years of college when he had to quit that gig. But I told him, listen, when you go out with these women, you figure out what they can afford. That's another thing I got from you. What they can afford. So they want you to take them to Papados. You're 16, you got a car, you got some money. Hey, let's go to Papados.
Yeah.
If they can't afford Papados, that's not where you go. If they can afford Wendy's, you take them to Wendy's and then you pay for Wendy's. But don't let these women, who most of them come from single mother homes, who are teaching them to go out there and make sure that they keep their credit right, they keep their coins in their pockets, and they get their meals and their drinks from you. Don't be that guy. You know what I'm saying? Because that is a dead end. That's a dead end thing, because we're not raising women like we were raising them in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s. Nope. We're not raising the women to be, wives and mothers and monogamous. These women they out there just like young men are out there.
Very much so.
And so don't get financially hazed. So don't look up and you don't spend all your being in the military, I watched a lot of men spend their way into women's lives. And then when it was over, like when I was in Korea, man, them women, they would sack their money away for a year. And the brother's just out there spending. He get back. He got to take an advance. He got to get that DPP. He broke, his credit bad. He buy here, pay here. And she done went overseas and stacked up, $30,000-$40,000 because the men were paying away.
And that's okay for them. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And that's the funny part, is that nobody sees they see the imbalance and they don't recognize it until it's their children on the other end of it. So
Right.
like with you pointed out through experience, hey, get your ducats right and then go explore the world with more resources, and you ain't got to have the Wendy's conversation
Right.
with the wrong chick. You know what I'm saying? It's
Hey man, it
hey
was look.
man.
It was this. This is what I told him, and he didn't listen. Because one thing I learned about men is you can give them good game, but sometimes they got to go through it.
They got to go
And for
through it to see
me,
if it's real.
and my job is to welcome you back without the spirit of "I told you so."
Without that, I told you so. Yeah,
Yeah,
you man,
and
look,
and,
that's
and you
hard.
got to be able to come back because they won't come back. They'll avoid you, and through their avoidance, they'll dig a deeper hole, right? And so I told my son, "Hey man, look, don't go up to school and fall in love. You know, I'm not telling you to not be a eunuch or a monk, but I am saying give me 5 to 7 years of focused effort on your career, on what you
Hmm.
want to do. Because what's going to happen is when you get to where you're going, the women that you're going to meet are going to have made a similar sacrifice and they're going to be better for you." Well, he went up there, he went
Hmm.
the second semester, he met and fell in love with a girl that the family fell in love with because she was a wonderful woman. But what happened is exactly what I tell people all the time. He became about her, and he was no longer the big man on campus about drumming, and she fell out of love with him because he was no longer the big guy. He was falling around with his nose wide open. And one thing about women, if they love a man with purpose, and they're gonna try you and come to try to come between you and that purpose. And the minute you let them usurp your purpose, they're gonna lose respect for you. And it might be silently, but I like to say, the next thing you know, she'll be sucking somebody's ding-a-ling in the parking lot at work because you're not on your purpose anymore.
Man,
And
look.
he learned that.
Hmm. Yeah, you know you got to go against the grain because you know what can he learn from you? You know what I'm saying? That's what any young man is gonna say. You know, right away.
Right.
Like, what does old man know that you know he don't know what he's talking about, or whatever. You know what I'm saying, phraseology that you can come up with that you know what I'm saying that shows that you're open for rebellion just to prove a
Yeah,
point.
yeah. Let me
And
tell you what I told a young man. And people don't get this, and I want to say this, and I want you to be clear on this part. I am the worst person, or a person like me is the worst person to get marital advice from. Okay, I've been married. I've been with my wife for 32 years. We've been married 28. I tell men all the time, the best person to get marital advice from is a man who has been divorced once or at least twice, because he has experienced every every 360 degrees of every emotion. I've never been through a divorce. I don't know the pain of that, and I can't explain it, right? But a man who's been divorced, sometimes they get married the second time, it's a rebound. So that's why I say 2 times.
yep,
The second time, he is gonna know what he will and will not accept. And if he goes back into this, if he goes back into it the same way, he was something you should have never listened to before. And that it's that third relationship because you're growing. We were conditioned to get married in our 20s, right? But you're not really coming into yourself until you're 40, right? And so when you get to that level, when you're, 35, 36, 37, you really know what you want, but you might be in a bad relationship. You might be in an unbalanced relationship.
that is very
But that
true.
next relationship, that next relationship, everyone I know who got into a relationship right at 40 is set up the way they wanted to be set up, or they putting up with shit because they don't have no backbone. And that's how you decide. So when dude was asking me, should he get married, da da da, I was like, man, look, don't ask me.
Yeah,
Don't ask
yeah,
me. You need to go ask my boy Cedric, or you need to ask a cat named Victor,
yeah,
because he's gonna tell you, listen, man, focus on you, know what you will and won't accept, get your ground rules together, and it's kind of hard to do inside of a multi decade relationship.
yeah. Because you trapped in your ways. You really stuck in a loop. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you got fixed lanes where there's like limited mesh points. And what I mean is that 10, 15 years ago, people would get married. You got your separate jobs. You go to work, you come home. and you talk about your day to the level of understanding of your mate, and that's it. You don't never really, you just get ready for the next day, you know.
Right.
But then it becomes uh like almost autopilot, as you could probably attest to that. Then the next thing you know, you got an empty nest and you're trying to figure things out. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And you figure out what you want to do. You got your kids off going in the right space, just like you talked about the 4 stages of parenting. And like you got the last one, and they on their way. So you gotta reconfigure your purpose too.
Right.
I don't think people talk enough about men after they've done the dutiful thing of raising their children, uh, to get themselves back into I guess their creative space, whatever their purpose is, because your purpose has been served by the time that your kids are, functioning adults, and capable of
Absolutely.
making decisions without you. So you can't use them as a crutch. You know what I'm saying? Like a man can't use the excuses uh, that some women would say. I immersed myself in raising the kids, like they didn't think, that they would live past a certain hour a day after their children were born, raised.
Yeah, I think
Like
we have a short. A lot of people in our community, we have a short planning horizon, right? And when you talk about kids, I always knew, and you've heard me say this before. I didn't raise any kids. I was raising humans who were going to be kids for 1/5 of their life if they lived to be 70 or 80 years old.
you're gonna be an adult a
And
lot longer. You're gonna be a child.
going to be an adult. And like Vic says, they shouldn't have to recover from their childhood. Their childhood should set them up to propel into the next level, right? And a lot of people, and I'm gonna say men and women, they say they'll die for the kids, but they won't live for them. Meaning, if you want to make a better way for your child, you shouldn't be struggling more than 6 years. And this is what I mean by that. Okay, you identified, especially if you're a woman, you got access to programs. What I'm doing is not working. Why don't I go to, let's say, become an RN? Okay, it's going to take you 4 to 6 years to become like a LVN, which is not bad money, right? And then you go to the next level. But a lot of people will become a CNA, which is probably, bed pans, $15 an hour, and they'll stay there for 30 years talking about, I did this for my kids. And the dumbest thing I hear in my community, man, among the dumbest thing I hear is, I got to retire my mama. I watched my mama work so hard. No, what you watched is your mother or your father not take control of their life, enhance their skills, get marketable skills, and rise up out of whatever situation they was in to help the kids be better. And so now you have to take care of them, right? When it's really my job to leave my children or my children's children an inheritance. And for those who believe in, the Southern style of Christianity, their book tells you that you leave an inheritance for your children and for your grandchildren.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so, yeah, and so it's about, will you live for your child? Will you go, if you're going to work hard and things are going to be tough, why don't you go to trade school? Why don't you figure out something other than DoorDash that's going to get you into a marketable skill? And it might take 3 to 5, even 10 years. But guess what? The other 40 years of your life, you're going to be set up. And I don't think I know we don't think like that. I think we get stuck where we were when we had that child or when we had that bad relationship. And now we say, I'm just going to pour everything I have into my children. And your children are going to look at you like, man, why am I giving my mom money? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for real. Like, you know, I know I was fortunate enough to be in a situation where I remember being in basic training, and I remember an old story where like my mom had told me, when you and your brother get jobs, you don't have to worry about financially supporting us. And I didn't even
Yeah.
understand, what I'm saying, what she was telling me, because I never looked at things that way, because I didn't live a life where, like as children, we were obligated to contribute financially to the household for it to run. All we had to do was focus on being kids, getting good grades in school, the stuff that you would anticipate from children. But when I got to basic
Right.
training, and I remember we had payday activities, and that's like usually a designated day for people to get on the phone, pay bills online or whatever they're gonna do. At the time, it wasn't no internet, so it was really just getting on the phone and calling Western Union and sending money back home. And people would
Yeah.
rush to the payphones, and I never went. And they were like, "You don't have to send no money back home," and then like I said, "Nah, man, my mama's still working, my daddy's still working, they're still together." You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
why do I need to send them any money? But as I got older, I realized that it was a lot of people that did not have the structure that my parents provided me, and my
Right.
brother. And so as I get older and I'm able to have a conversation like this and reflect, I know that they set conditions as best as possible with what they had to work with. And, ultimately, it was about creating a safe space for you to be able to see that you deserve to benefit from the work that you put in.
Look, man, when I left for the military, my parents, specifically my mom, and I want to shout my parents out, but I want to shout out my mom, the entrepreneur in the family. I don't know if it was just having one less mouth to feed or it was the economy, but my mom came up. My parents basically came up. They started a business back then that they run today. It's called Nalls Boarding Care, and
Yeah,
they take care of. And now it's just elderly people, but it was MHMR, which is like you can't really say mentally retarded anymore, but that's what the state called them: mental health, mental retardation. Uh, Boarding houses. They had like 7 boarding houses. Um, so when I decided to separate from the military, um, my parents helped me get into business, opening me a restaurant, and I was able to live in a fourplex that my parents owned for 3 years. So I was building a business, living rent free. And so I got out when I was like maybe 26. By the time I was 30, I had a business making probably about $350,000 a year and built a custom house from the ground and changed the economic outlook of my life and my children's life forever, right?
right.
But what I had to do was, now before we moved into the fourplex, we moved in with my parents in the spare bedroom. I had my wife, I had an older child who was like 10 and then a newborn, and she was in the crib in the room. And my wife and my wife's family, they didn't they didn't they didn't really get it. But we did it, and 3 years later, we were set. And I used to be arguments on Facebook about, you know, getting kicked out the house at 18. And when you get 18, you got to get out, this, that, another. And I tell my story every time. I moved home married with 2 kids, 26 years old. To the world, I was a bum. But I had watched the Koreans, in Long Beach, I watched the Vietnamese do it. Cambodian, I'm sorry. Because the
Hmm.
part of Long Beach I live in now is called Cambodia Town. It's official. They take it over the whole neighborhood. But they were living 3, 4 families in that house while us, the black culture, was laughing at them. And we were kicking our kids out at 18, not ready for the world. Some of us went to selling dope. Some of us went to selling pussy. Some of us went to hustling. You know what I'm saying? Some of us went to college. Some of us went to the military. But what my parents did for me and my family, it changed the outlook forever. And we turned around and did something similar with our children, right? And the next level is that we don't have any grandkids, but what I watched my son's best friend, his college roommate, check this out, man. His parents got divorced. They lived in Napa, California. They had a house. My son said,
Okay.
"Hey, Dad, I'm going with Aunt. His name is Aunt, and we're gonna have dinner in the house one more time." I said, "I thought his parents were getting divorced." Yeah, they're getting a divorce, but they're gonna have dinner as a family one more time in the house. These people got divorced when their son graduated college, top of his class, bought him a house in Dallas, in which my son rented a room, and they all were musicians, right? They split the money up. The mom would be there, the father would be there. They have their significant others. It wasn't personal; it was business, and they
Yeah.
took all their equity. So then they came up with the plan. Hey, we want to move to LA next June. My son gets a gig on a cruise where he's not going to be home till when? June. So Aunt moves in with his he moves out to California early. They relist this house they bought in Texas a year ago. My wife sold him the house. The house is selling for $80,000 more than what they bought it for last year, and they're going to take those proceeds and buy them a house in LA. And so we're wondering, oh man, it costs too much money to live in LA, and the average house cost is $400,000, blah blah blah. But these others, and I'm not just gonna call them white, they just happen to be white. They're planning for this. Hey, when you go off to college, we're gonna break this up, or we're gonna wait till you finish, and then we're gonna buy you a crib. You know what I'm saying? And then we're gonna roll that equity into another crib in LA because that's where you want to be. And just that level of support, man, it just freaked me out because I wasn't conditioned like that. But now, when I have grandchildren, it won't be about paying their rent for the first year. It'll be more like on some Vic shit. Hey man, we bought this house, we put it on Airbnb, and now that you're out of college, it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we starting over every time. Matter of fact, I heard Young Guru say we start our kids off at not zero, but less than zero because the kids are paying for the funeral.
Man, look, like you remember when you watch TV, like in I'd say the 80s or whatever, and then one of the catch lines was Grandpa bought the farm when he died.
Yeah.
yeah, and they don't even realize that they was really talking about that means. Insurance. Yeah, it was talking about the insurance policy paid for everything, probably. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There was enough insulation. There was a family trust, and even in his death, he was still productive. You know?
Right.
So, if we unpack that, the importance of us understanding insurance, finances, economics, history, all of that is so vital early on. You know what I'm saying? And like my uncle just commented not too long ago, and he says, gentlemen, that's why these real-time conversations are so important for us to talk to us to produce better men, fathers, and children. And, you know, all of this peripheral conversation that we're having amounts to the leadership and guidance, you know what I'm saying, that you represent for your kids. You know, like when life throws an odd ball at them, you know what I'm saying? There's only so much you can teach them, but you also got to be receptive and coachable so you can maintain your credibility with them. Because the last thing you want to do is be someone that can't take in new information and, you know what I'm saying, and not consider new variables.
Man, let me tell you something. And man, I love that. And more so, you know, we put value on the wrong things. We put value on what Europeans believe is success. So, you know, when I want to mess somebody up, I ask them, how are your kids doing? And don't tell me about their job or their GPA. And it stumps Black people because as soon as we greet, oh, how you doing? Oh, my son just got a master's degree, and my daughter is, you know, working over at the thing. And I'm wondering, hey, do they even mess with you, right?
Right.
Like, are they recovering from their childhood? Are those whoopings in anger? Are they having anger management issues? Are they suicidal? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But school, and I used to get, I won't say ridiculed because you're not going to ridicule me, but I never cared about my kids' GPA.
Mm-hmm.
I really never cared. I was looking for a couple other things to see if, you know, because we homeschooled for 7 years. And what I was teaching them was 4 things. And this is all you need to know if you want to homeschool. Do not follow the curriculum of teaching them about this fake ass history, the capitals of all the 50 states, things you can find on Google. This is what you teach your children at the early age. Reading for comprehension, writing for understanding, arithmetic, just, you know, basic math. And the 4th, and probably the most important, is critical thinking, logic. Like, if this, then that. It's really mathematical. Like, life is about math. It's inputs and outputs, right? And so I have some problems today that I never had on a production gig. But I've had enough problems to say, you know what, I had a problem like this before. And, you know, the number one problem in the computer world is the reboot. Hey, restart that computer. Before we start doing all this other stuff, going to Best Buy, buying new wires, restart that computer. And that's going to fix most of the problems. And the only reason I know that because I've done it so many times. And so I don't care about your GPA. What I care about is that you learn something, that you master something. So my son was having issues with, he went to art school. He's a musician. And the only reason his GPA was high because half his class was music, right?
Yeah.
And music is math.
It
Music
really
is
is.
a real-time math. And
Yep.
so when they say go to the 4 and all them cats know what you're talking about, and they coming in the key of C and they go from C to D and they doing all these circle of fifths and inverse things in real time, oh man,
Yep.
that's math,
Look,
player.
man, look, life is algebra. You know, we had one of those when you called me and I was in the car, you know, said a few months ago, and I said life is really algebra. Like you're
Yes,
problem solving, you're calculating, you know, how fast you need to run across the street to avoid getting hit by cars. You know what I'm
yes.
saying? That determines, you know, like uh, you know, how you play in traffic. And then you start calculating the other variables, like, well, what kind of shoes do you have on? You got the wrong shoes on the wrong day. You can't run across the street as efficiently as you would any other time. To say you
Yeah.
couldn't get across, you just got to make a different calculation.
Man, let me tell you who's my favorite mathematician right now, and that's Steph Curry, because he has determined the trajectory of that ball based on many factors, right? If he's wide open, if he got a shooter in his face, if he has to do another
Change the
calculation
arc.
and go off the backboard,
Yep.
you know what I'm saying? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's math. And but what we've fallen into, especially in Texas, if you went to school in Texas, in '86, the year I graduated high school, they came out with a rule called no pass, no play. Meaning, if you didn't pass the class, and it's still in effect, if you're not passing your classes, you can't play on the football field. But a lot of people don't know
Yeah.
you can't play in the band. You can't play anything extracurricular, right? And so they made you say, okay, well, he's a dumb jock. Well, hold on a second. I know a lot of professional football players and a few professional basketball players. Let's talk about football. You know, the playbook at the University of Alabama, there are no dummies on that field.
Nope.
There are so many variables. And who do you have to be to go to Alabama? You have to be a dog. So not only do you have to be a top physical specimen, you have to be as mentally strong as they come. And your test questions just happen to be in front of 80,000 people. So did you learn your lesson plan or your game plan? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the smartest people on the university campus are D1 athletes. These are the people who play in sports like football and basketball and team sports. But we want to tell them that if they can't figure out the intricacies of the French Revolution, that they're not fit to go do what what these other little people who make the rules can't do.
Yeah.
You can't do. And let's talk about. You know, I know you're an Alabama fan, and you know I'm a Texas fan, right? But I'm a
Yeah.
fan of greatness. And let me tell you, the greatest Alabama graduate, and I don't know if he graduated, in my mind, is Jalen Hurts.
Oh yeah, he definitely graduated.
Okay, and so he graduated because he was able to leave before the transfer portal.
Yeah, he
But to
went.
come
He
in
went
there
to
and
Oklahoma as a graduate transfer. Yep.
do what he did, and then to get sat down and not cry like a bitch and subvert the whole team, to come back when called upon, and then to transfer to another university and do the same thing. And then people say, oh, he can't play quarterback, he's a receiver, he's a tight end. And to do what he's doing with the undefeated Eagles, that says a lot about not only his athletic ability, not only his mental capacity, but says a lot about his father and his mother and his upbringing. Because
Mm-hmm.
there are probably 1,800 kids in the transfer portal. As soon as shit don't go right for these coddled athletes, they leave. And they leave University of Alabama and they go somewhere where they can get some burn. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And even listening to an interview with Alvin Kamara, he said he was an idiot to go to Alabama because in his running back room, there are like 7 people who went first round, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But he ended up getting hurt and going to Tennessee and coming back. And so I said all that about sports to say that we are amazing. We dominate that sport, right? But we've been led to believe if we don't have a 3.0 GPA, we're not smart.
Yeah.
And that makes me sick. And I got off on a tangent, but let me tell you what I was talking about with my son. He he was having a problem with like something like statistics in
Mm-hmm.
11th grade. And so he had this Korean kid helping him with his math. This Korean kid really liked music and wanted to be in a band. My son put this guy in his band, and that person did all of his math homework. And for me, I said, son, you are learning the lessons of life. Now, if you get caught doing this, I'm acting like I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And that's part of the deal.
Yeah.
The next year, 2 months from graduation, he was failing some type of statistics or some crazy class like that. He went online and researched what he needed to go to school in the University of Arts in Philadelphia. And he only needed this class if he planned on going to a 4-year Texas university. He had all that research before he called me and said, "Hey, Dad, this is what it is. I'm thinking if I don't pass this class, I'm not graduating. I don't need it. It only in Texas. I'm going to school in Pennsylvania. What you think? Can I drop it?" Hey, man, I'm proud of you, son, because the other kids would have prayed about it. They would have screamed about it. They would have cried and brought their parents. He took action.
Yeah.
When he seen this was not the move, let me see. My objective is to get through here. This is high school graduation. Is just, hey man, they don't ask you for your GPA when you go on tour with Kanye West or Justin Timberlake.
No,
right?
they don't.
Just get through here, get to the next level, and figure out the system, and then figure out where the gaps are. And he figured it out, and that's when I knew he was learning. Not when he had a 3.9 GPA. That didn't tell me nothing. That didn't tell me nothing. What told me something when he was able to look at systems and bend them and push up to the line and figure out, and I'm actually gonna give somebody some game on this whole call right here. And I'm just gonna do it publicly, hey, here it is. So this is not breaking the law, but it's running right up to it. And, hopefully there's only a few people on here, and this is how you get it. So it came time to get my passport. Okay. I'm going somewhere. I need a passport fast. Right. Be qualified for this gig for my son who had an opportunity to go overseas. In order to get a passport fast, without, waiting 6 to 8 weeks or driving to Houston, you got to have a trip within 72 hours. Okay. So what I did was I went and booked a trip to Mexico on Southwest Airlines to leave in 2 days. Right? Well, Southwest has a policy of when you don't take the flight, you cancel the flight, you get to keep your bread.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went, printed out the itinerary, got the passport, and then canceled the flight. And I had a $300 credit to use for when I really was going to travel. It's being able to look at systems and use them to your advantage without breaking the law or getting as close as you can. So no laws were broken. Now, was it the spirit of it? Some people would say, "Oh man, you cheated." Okay, I got my passport and I'm chilling wherever I needed to chill. Meanwhile, you did it the right way and you waiting 6 weeks and you done missed your trip, your anniversary trip, because you was trying to do it according to what these government employees told you what the rules was. Does that make sense?
Understood. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just worked the loophole. You just worked the gap. You know what I'm saying? They definitely worked the gap to get in your pocket.
Yeah. They're gonna work you. You might as well work it.
They will inconvenience you, you know what I'm saying, without even a face-to-face,
Right.
That'd be the funny part. It's like you don't even get a chance to get denied at the counter no more. You just have an issue. You wake up with it in your email, you wake up with it on text message. That the faster that you can communicate, the faster that somebody else can inconvenience you.
Hey man, I learned that in the military. I would just go. I remember I go up into the admin and ask for something, and it's the easiest. No one gets fired for saying no.
No.
And basically, what I learned is I just go every day and ask a different person. Somebody's going to tell me yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But too many people go for a no, and I don't go for it. I don't take a no from somebody who can't give me a yes. If you don't have yes power, your no doesn't work for me.
It doesn't matter. Like for real. Like you can't make me feel like you control my outcomes. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Hey, to everybody that's paying attention, I'm dropping Troy's Facebook over here on the chat so you guys can kind of scroll and see where to find him at. See his name. He got his son on a cover photo who just had a birthday recently, right?
Yeah, just turned 24. Yeah, man, she's 24. My daughter's 28. Man, let me talk about my daughter for a second. A lot of people don't
talk about the kids, man.
Daughter.
Yeah,
my oldest daughter, because she was pre social media. She's 35. She don't get up in the videos, but she is an amazing human and a great sibling, great example, and just an overall good person and a very smart thinker, right? My middle daughter is I tell everybody, man, people say, ask me, do I have a favorite child? And I tell them yes, because they got a favorite parent. And my middle child, and everybody knows it, my middle daughter is my favorite child. Okay. My oldest, and people frown about it, my oldest child, my oldest daughter is my favorite human who walks this earth. And then I feel like my son is like my twin flame. He is my mirror of when, especially when he was growing up, I can tell what my bad habits were. Look, I was about to write a parenting book when I had my girls. And then when my son came along, I knew I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. Right.
Right.
But my habits, my bad habits started appearing in my son. And a lot of times, if you're into whooping your kids, a lot of times what people are doing are beating the dissatisfaction they have with themselves out of their kids, or trying to. And so I had to take a hard look at myself, because I was watching him, and I wasn't happy with what I was seeing in my mirror.
Understood. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And but Jasmine, my middle child, she does what I do on a much higher level, and part of it because of the ageism that exists in our world. I'm a 54-year-old heterosexual, straight, somewhat ashy black man with a gray beard, right? I'm not the person who you hire because I'm gonna get more respect than your supervisor. And that's kind of different when you work inside corporate structures, right? But she's a very beautiful, easy on the eyes, flamboyant, bright, smart, witty 28-year-old. And she did something when she was 16 that made me proud, caused a little problem in the household. So as you're raising your kids, a lot of times people will just take their electronics, right? And so, she'd get in trouble, we would take her phone. So one day, when she wasn't in trouble, she said, "Hey, Dad, I see all these old Blackberries and Treo phones. Can I take them over to Radio Shack when Radio Shack was a thing, and trade them in? They give me like, a gift certificate or whatever." So she did that. She went and gathered up all the electronics, and they gave her a gift certificate. And meanwhile, someone in our building hired her to direct or be a creative director for a video. Okay, so there's two things happening at one time. So when she got the money for my old phones, she bought a BlackBerry. This is pre-iPhone. So the person who asked her, "How much are you going to charge me to style this video?" She said, "Hey, turn this phone on for me and pay the bill, and that'll be in the payment." Right? And so the next time she got in trouble, Mom said, "Okay, hand me your phone." She said, "Nope, can't do it." Like, what are you talking about? "Well, you said you took the phone because you paid for it. I paid for this phone." And my wife's mouth dropped. And me, I was laughing like Kevin Hart just told the funniest thing. It was I laughed like it was an Eddie Murphy joke. Because I understood what she did. And what you do is you set up, these kids were raised in such a way where they were been taught to overcome objections and to solve problems. So if the problem is I get in trouble, you take my phone because you pay for it, how about I pay for it?
Yeah.
Right? And it was at that moment, and she told me this, and I heard it in a podcast interview, and I'll send it to you. It was at that moment she understood the value of ownership.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
You can't take that from me.
Away from you.
Can't take that away from me if I paid for it.
Yes. And, of course, Mom still was able to take it. And just straight up honest, man. And she lost something in that transaction.
Yeah.
That it took a while to get back.
Yep.
Yeah. It took a while to get back because now your word is not what you said it is. So what I recommend parents, if you're going to take your children's electronics, don't make it because you pay for it, right?
Yeah.
Because what you're going to create is a situation where you're creating a financially dependent person who will think it's normal in a situation that's called love, that their significant other withholds the family resources when they're not happy with you. And that's what it teaches. Rather than saying, "Hey, here's the rule. If this happens, and set the rules or the expectations or the consequences, both positive and negatively, up front as much as you can. When you play in an NBA basketball game, you know what a flagrant foul is, you know the penalty, and you may still do it. And guess what? You may get away with it. But if you get caught, okay, it's 2 free throws. And as long as you know the rules, or young people know the rules that they're operating in, they can go through and understand what their boundaries are, and they might press up against them, but they can operate in a way that doesn't make them have to break rules to find out what they are. Because a lot of rules are unwritten. We don't know what the rule is. Certain things you get a whooping for. It was funny uh, at the family meeting. You get a whooping when Mr. Ray is around. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? so
Yeah.
so yeah, that's my parenting tip. Is like, if you're gonna set rules and expectations, set them not based on, uh, uh, uh you know, I run this, I pay for this, because guess what? They're gonna be looking for an exit in a way that's not healthy, in my opinion.
Understood. Yeah, like the basis of rebellion would be rooted in something that, I like to call an unhealthy competition or unhealthy conflict.
Right.
Um, and if it's
And look,
unhealthy, it's probably
people
avoidable.
ask me, how did you raise three kids and none of them went through rebellion? Right? Like, I didn't have rebellious teenagers at any point. No, no. Now, me and my son butt heads, but we butt heads like men, off to the side. And guess what? Men know how to butt heads, holler, and cuss each other out, and then resolve it and keep moving. Right?
Because
But the
men have
reason,
code.
yes, yes, and the reason people rebel, the only reason people rebel, is when their humanity is not being recognized. Okay?
Very true.
It, yeah, and so as long as you recognize their right to being human, and their right to exist in the space, and their right to have their own independent thoughts, whether they're right or wrong, because what you don't want to do is shut them down. I love listening. They can be wrong as hell. And I've had some conversations with my children. They were just as wrong as two left shoes. But without me opening and listening, without constantly reminding them that I was the adult, or I was the OG, I got to see what they were thinking. And then I was able to adjust my message to say, okay, if they're thinking this is what they believe. Because your behaviors, all I got to do is watch your behavior, and I can tell what you
All I gotta do
believe.
is watch your behavior. Yep. I can tell
Yeah.
what you
And so,
believe by your behavior.
yeah, and so behavior modification doesn't work. Belief modification is what it takes. So
Mm-hmm.
we got to address it at the root. Like, what is the why do you believe this is okay, right?
Yeah.
And then once we address that, it creates its own momentum. Like me, like, by my behavior, I'm a straight man, right?
Yeah.
And so when gay people see me, they don't see no gay on me. It's not confusing, because my behavior is such that they can see my belief system. And one of my closest friends, John Lawson, is married to a man, right?
Yeah.
And he's never like, hey man, like, you ever thought about, because he sees what my behavior is.
Yeah. You don't
And,
miscommunicate.
yeah. And so if my behavior was such that I was out here doing certain things, then you can see, okay, this is what Troy believes. And then
Mm.
it'd be open for interpretation. But as long as you understand what a person's belief system is, because they'll tell you what their belief system is based on what they do on Sunday, right? But to me, it's what you do every day of the week that lets me know you're not the Christian or the Muslim or the Buddhist that you say you are, because your belief system doesn't line up. And I meet very few people who are very religious that their beliefs and their behaviors line up, without them, hiding certain things, certain behaviors.
Yeah. I agree with that. It's I think you see like the meme from time to time that says that I don't care about apologies, I care about change behavior. I'm paraphrasing that right now.
Yeah,
The best apology is change behavior.
right.
And when you start talking about changing behavior, but you hit that nail on the head, on the level below that is the belief in the belief itself, the
Yeah,
ideology of why you're doing what you're doing. You know what I'm saying?
right.
And when you start getting into the weeds of that, and you start challenging a different level of accountability, you know what I'm saying? And you testing your own parenting too, because like you try you raise your kids, I'd imagine, to use the instincts and the talents for the betterment of themselves. You know what I'm saying? To keep them out of negative situations or navigate them, at a minimum.
Yeah,
Survival skills that you hope they don't have to use, but if they in the event that they do, you can walk away and leave them in the wilderness and let them figure it out. You know?
Yeah, I think what it is like what the problem, not the problem, but we don't expose our kids to enough, right? And what I mean by that is, by the time my middle daughter was 12, she had been to Africa, Canada. She had left the United States. She had left the South. She had left the church culture. She had left the Bible Belt. You know, she tasted foods and witnessed cultures from all over the world. Whereas when you live in the Bible Belt like we do, there's certain things, certain cultural things that, to me, hold us back, right? And organized religion just happens to be one of them. From a standpoint of, you spend your whole life been told, I'm not worthy, I'm not worthy. And you keep telling yourself that, you're going to believe it, right? Well, I didn't grow up in the South. I had the benefit of growing up around Black Panthers. And one thing that Black Panthers did was do for self. It's like, okay, we know it's a problem, but we can't keep waiting on these other people to help us. So they started the food pantry programs, right? They started Head Start for young kids. And, they would teach us self-defense in the neighborhoods. And it was such a threat that the COINTELPRO or the FBI had to infiltrate and shut them down, right? Well, when I moved to Texas at 16, I was surprised that Black people thought they were less than white people. And it was like self-check. It was like even our quarterback thought the white guy was better because he was white, because he didn't see any Black quarterbacks at the highest level.
Yeah.
And, from a religious standpoint, when you sit there and tell yourself you are not worthy, and, you're going to believe it, so much so that the only thing I told my son and my daughters is, look, man, don't go out here. I know I'm switching gears. Don't go out here and create a Black church testimony, right?
Yeah.
So I've told you, my son is on a cruise. He's put himself in position to win. He's qualified. He don't need no miracles. He don't need no big miracles from God, because he know how to read music. He put himself in position. He don't have no kids. Don't have a criminal record. I said, listen, man, let me tell you something, dog. If you come back, let's say you're 24, when you're 34, if you have a powerful testimony, that means you fucked it up, son. That means you went over there.
You did too much. You was already set up. All you had to do was get up and go to work every day, right?
All you had to do was do it. You went over there and you got hooked on I don't know, crack from Greece, and you met a girl and you put a baby in her and you fell off the boat and you did all this thing, but then God gave it all back to you 10 years later, right?
Yeah.
Or if we have a conversation and when you're 34, he's like, man, seeing the world at 24 put me in position to see a side of something I could never imagine, and it put me on a platform and it helped me explode my life. It was the best thing I did. I said, that's what that means you did it right. But let me tell you something. If you're still Black, which you will be, if that second way, they're gonna blame it on me. They're gonna blame it on your mama.
Yeah.
They're gonna blame it on your cousin out of Blackstone. Everybody but you. Right? And no one's gonna clap for you. But if you do it the Negro Black church testimony, all niggas is gonna be slapping their knee. They're gonna be jumping up and down, doing backflips, because they love a struggle.
They love a struggle, man.
So if you need external validation, go ahead and fuck it up real good so you can get it back. Right?
Hey,
but if you don't, but you ain't gonna have a whole bunch of people line up. They gonna say you had a silver spoon. They ain't gonna know the many, many nights you spent laying up on that cruise, homesick and lonely and bored. You know what I'm saying? No Pornhub, no Netflix. You know what I'm saying?
Hey,
no
man,
English.
You're right though. Like I always like the line that Dr. Dre had on that Compton album, right? And he dropped in like 2015. He said, "Don't call me fortunate because you don't know what it cost me." You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And he getting that story now in his 20s that's gonna stick with him forever. It's gonna separate. Like, that's the thing. Like, we we're a culture that doesn't um transition well when we start talking about separating yourself from your peers.
Yeah,
It's a cringy conversation because there's a lot of people that's gonna be like they love how great you are, but they don't want you to talk about how great you are. Well,
right,
this podcast is gonna be it's set up to celebrate men who have done it the right way, the hard way. Because if we can give rappers and other entertainers unsolicited praise for making music or content or whatever it is that they do, we should be able to celebrate the people that did it with the straight and narrow, kept it
right.
simple, and stayed focused, and that family was part of their purpose. So for everybody that's listening, right now, like talk to them a little bit about our relationship, what you've done this year up until this point, and like I want to give you the floor to talk about yourself, man. You know what I'm saying?
Well, real
Because
talk, real talk. Let me tell you that route you talking about, it's a lonely route, and there's even struggles in that, and most of those struggles exist above your shoulders in your head, right? And so I
mhm,
remember this conversation that me and you had. As successful as you've become over the time that I've known you, it's really the mental stuff that we struggle with, right? Because a lot of times we don't have peers. And that's why I value our relationship because we can, you know what? I tell people, you're one of the few people who I won't call or pick up the phone unless I got a half hour because I know I want to stay on the phone that long because of the conversation that I can have with you or you can have with me that we don't feel less than because a lot of times, it's hard to tell your woman some of these things um, because then you don't want to burden them with that. Number one or two, you don't want that used against you in an argument a year and a half from now, right? Like
right,
some of the things you called and talked to me about, or some of the things I've opened up to you about. I know I don't have to never hear about those in a context that's designed to hurt me. You know what I'm saying?
correct,
Like
yeah,
I got a homie who we was going back and forth, and he said some things in a public discourse that I said to him in private. And man, I started to talk about how he was sexually abused by his brother, at 7 years old. But I was like, no, because that was said in a moment of weakness or a moment of openness and friend that I valued that friendship that I would never use against you, because then I'd be being like a woman right now. You know what I'm saying?
yep,
Um, and so, talking about our relationship, I think started in a sports group,
yeah,
and it was based on we had a lot of similar values, and I think as younger men, we were very combative about our points of views, and very good at, for lack of a better word, being convincing people to either leave us the fuck alone, or hurting people with words. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like, like, and you can get these hands, but let me give you something that like your black eye is gonna heal in about 2 weeks. But I'm gonna tell you something that's gonna have you hurt for years,
yeah,
right? And I think as we both grew, we realized that, you know what, that's not completely necessary unless you bomb first. You
yeah.
know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I'm always like people get that maybe confused sometimes, that lack of response, you know what I'm saying, means one thing to them and it means something else to us. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? And
and
that value changes from moment to moment, you know what I'm saying, depending on what it is.
man, look,
So
I skip so many comments now because I know in order for me to masterfully carve you up and break your spirit and have you crying to your mama, I could use that hour or 2 hours or 3 days on something constructive for myself. You know
yeah,
what I'm saying?
yeah. Yeah, depending on how much time and energy I would like to dedicate to something. Like
Right.
it's really easy to avoid arguing with people. Just say what you got to say and keep it moving. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you say something that's concise and it can be sourced, it doesn't matter what they respond with. I don't
Right.
care. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So um when you master yourself, and that they really just trying to push your buttons, then you can see it, and they, the playbook is very thin, and you can move along very quickly.
Right,
So,
right.
and that's part of like, rule number one: men focus on men. You know what I'm saying? Like, focus on yourself, fam. If you focused on
Yeah,
yourself, you have a guideline that you can recognize trolls by. Because
yeah.
when you focus on yourself, you're prepared for chaos. When it happens. So, for you, how does a man thrive in chaos?
Uh, you know what? I believe that a man thrives in chaos by knowing what his objectives are, right? And so I'm in a chaotic situation right now, but I don't even talk about it because I've already laid the strategy out. I already laid the plan out to rectify it. And then I just go about the work. You know what I'm saying? And I think I went to school to get a degree in logistics because I love logistics. And right now, this is logistics. Like even getting on this call with you was a study in logistics, right? Based on what my schedule was yesterday compared to today. And so I think the thriving part is, as a black man, I know there was a lot of forces that want to just systematically tear me down. But knowing that I understand and I know what those marks are and what those systems are, I know how to stay away from the snake. I know where the snakes are at. And so I think that's how I thrive inside of a chaotic system. It's designed for me to not win. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then even being a veteran, I like to call these white man's benefits because my grandfather who had a GI Bill couldn't use it and couldn't get the VA loan because of redlining, right? And so until the laws and the rules were changed and let us as black soldiers take advantage of what I call white man benefits, um, we were in a losing battle. But now look at it. Look at how we both benefited from not only the GI Bill, but other military benefits we got, entitlements, what we're entitled to because of our length of service.
Yeah, I think when you think about thriving in chaos, I think that's when first you have to acknowledge if it's chaos or not.
Right.
And once you acknowledge the weight of the thing that you're trying to think critically about, and you determine if it's chaos or not, then that's when you thrive. I think you have to accept what's going on around you, and say, okay, it's not going the way I wanted to go. What do I have to submit to get a better understanding? Because you got to slow down in order to catch up to what's going on around you. Because like men like us live in the future. We come back
Right.
to the present day to say whatever we got to say. That's why we can speak so succinctly about things. You know what I'm saying? It's like I've already seen this play, and like this is my hot take on it. And generally speaking, I can trust my hot take on some things.
Yeah.
If especially if it warrants it.
Yeah, you remember a few years ago, I want to say 2018, anything before 2020, man, is I can't really compute. But the young real estate investors, quote unquote, were in Starbucks in Philadelphia and ended up getting arrested because uh, they couldn't use the bathroom without buying something like that. You remember that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
I do recall that.
so short story, I was actually in Philadelphia that day at a different Starbucks. And me and some people were having a discussion about it, and my wife was there. And basically, we stopped at Starbucks in New Jersey, which is like 15 minutes from Philly. And
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about it, and people were saying, oh yeah, man, that's messed up, that's messed up. And I told them I couldn't afford to get arrested to prove a point. And I'm not going to let a $10 an hour barista determine my future,
No
right?
way.
And so people didn't agree with me, and I turned to my wife, and she kind of did or didn't agree. Like, oh, that's messed up. It's 2018. I said, Tamara, we went to Starbucks that same day. What was the first thing we did when we walked in? What? We bought something. So that gives us all rights to use the bathroom or any other thing else they have in there. you can't use someone's place of business without being respectful. Like when I go use the internet in somebody's McDonald's, I don't care. I'm gonna buy apple pie. I'm gonna do something. That's my contribution to using all of these benefits, right? But not only that, I had a flight to catch. I had a family to run. And I'm not gonna wait for Channel 8 News to say I've been denied because I didn't buy anything to prove a point and get arrested. And if they want to do that, God bless them. Maybe they didn't have a flight that afternoon. And I said all that to say is when you're operating in chaos and you let someone who's worth $10 an hour, make them prove a point. I'm not.
I think I
I'm not
lost you.
willing to fight that fight. It's business.
No.
And even one time I had say it again.
Oh, I'm listening. I'm with you.
I was and this is gonna sound even stranger. I was on a flight to Boston to go work. This is back when Obama was the president. I had a gig where I was working with the Trump network. It was a organization, network marketing organization that Trump had put his name on, and I was doing some video work for them. And it was in Boston. So I bought a suit and I cut my facial hair off, right? Because that's what they do in Boston. And when I was getting off the plane, the man behind me, when I reclined in my seat, mid-flight, he started kicking my seat when I reclined. And so now I'm thinking, man, I'm gonna have to beat this dude's ass on the plane on the way to go pick up this check from the Trump organization. So when the plane landed, I made sure I stood up first to let him know I didn't approve of this, and that if he took it any more further, I may have to do something. But my wish was not to fight this man as a black man, 5'9", 250, fighting a white boy, 135 and 5'4". And when I towered over him and looked at him, he apologized. And for me, that was the best possible outcome. And right then, I turned it off too, because I think a lot of times black men, from our culture, my age or older, they value respect from a white person more than their freedom, right? And even from a black person. I've met plenty of people who say, he stepped on my shoe, he was disrespectful, and they killed that person, right? I don't let I don't need the respect of someone that bad to where I'm willing to sacrifice my freedom if they're not endangering my life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we have to learn how to. I've walked away and shut down more fights than I've had because I had somewhere to go or something to do that afternoon that was more important than me laying hands on you or me proving that I was physically stronger than you or what have you. Even in Karen situations, I've shut down Karens by just, let me get away, because if I beat the brakes off this white lady, I already know what the optics are.
It's all bad.
Let me get as far away from it as I can. Yes, I would love to world star her so I can get likes and stuff like that. But what is that going to cost me when the police show up?
Man, right? Way too much.
Way too much. And so we've been in contact with the law, and normally the law is the young white guy who couldn't play basketball or football. And I know that's a stereotype, but it's real. That's why it's a stereotype. And so you got to know how to manage that person because he has the gun and he has the badge. And one thing I learned in the military is how to interface with law enforcement respectfully without losing my life.
Yeah. You of course you got some situations that fall well outside of your control. I think that part is understood. But like ultimately, as a black man that's been in multiple spaces similar to you, in my own travels, I would tell you, man, like trying to be as neutral as possible and still be respected, where people, like they see your imagery first and then they try to treat you, how they feel like they should treat you, and not going off on them. You know what I'm saying? It's it's a constant battle. Like, because that's what I call the him. You know what I'm saying? Him is always with me. You know what I'm saying? Him is always on 10, and but it doesn't necessarily mean I have to react on 10. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm on 10 for situational awareness, so I can say I heard what you said. You know what I'm saying? And deal
Yeah,
with it like that as it comes. You know what I'm saying? But I'm not prepared. I'm prepared to go the distance, but that's not what I'm there for, because
that's not
you
what I'm here
know
for. Yeah,
that's not what I'm here for. And because, like, at what point do you get to say, you got to talk to me a little bit better than that, without trying to make a scene, because that's what you really want. Because, man, as well as I do, people, they have snap judgment, and they see you in a space, they think you the help, and I mean, you the fucking boss, and they don't really get
right.
that. You know what I'm saying? Because
Hey,
they
man,
used to accept their
can I
level of
say something
treatment.
very real on here?
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me say something that most people don't say. I'm a big black man who looks like Suge Knight, and I don't look nice, right? And sometimes I soften my look depending on where I'm at. But I maintain my blackness. And one thing I hate more than anything is a black man who doesn't maintain blackness, right? But as far as the humans I raised and my kids, I let them know early. There are benefits you get because you guys are attractive, light skinned blacks. Okay, so don't think that some of these promotions and these positions you're getting are because that you're the most talented. It's because you're light skinned. Okay, and your
Man, talk about
darker
the
cousins
colorism
don't have
factor.
that benefit.
Man,
Man,
look,
look,
talk about the
colorism for me,
colorism factor as a light skinned black man. Talk about the advantages, or the pros and cons as being a light skinned black man.
so I wish that you had a picture of me when I was 15 before I moved to Texas, because
Mm-hmm.
even at the light, what I am now, what they would call red, I am probably 10 or 15 shades darker than when I grew up. I was the quintessential light skinned nigga. Until I went to New Orleans, I had to constantly prove my blackness, and that's how I learned how to fight. Because when the stuff went crazy in East Long Beach, you want to pick on the pretty nigga, right? Until the people figured out that was not the move. And so in the internal side, there's a struggle within our own people that we don't like each other because of the colorism, because of the unsaid benefits that light skinned blacks get. Now the white people don't love us either, right? But we're more acceptable to light skinned people, to where as light skinned men and women, we're less threatening than and more attractive to them society wise, right? And so, man, I hated being light skinned growing up. I fought it, not so much where I would sit out in the sun, uh, but I did not want to be the pretty dude. I didn't want to be the guy in New Jack City to get stabbed in the hand. And so I always identified as a black man, not as a light skinned black man. Well, I didn't even like light skinned women. I just happened to find a light skinned wife, and we had like
Did I lose you, Troy? You got me. Let's see here. Maybe in a bad area. Yep. So Troy's probably in a bad area. He'll be calling back soon. But Troy's my spotlight for tonight on the Accountable Masculinity podcast. He is, I call him the most known unknown. Let me put this back up here so you can kind of look at what I had up here. So Troy's like the most known unknown. He is a media he is a media entrepreneur. Like, it's just like really no way to capture every single thing he's done. Everybody knows him. He's done the Super Bowl, the Oscars. Uh, he's done the Grammys. It's, rise with Black Adam Blackstone. You can see the BBE logo behind him on the screenshot that's in front of you, you know, where I got his Facebook page up. he is he's very well connected, and you know, he just popped back in, so let me finish running my mouth to him. Hey, I was just up here covering for you while you had a technical issue real quick, but I
Yeah,
really
my
wanted
wife
you to
called.
yeah, I really want you to talk about yourself, man, and how you've
Okay.
been
You
able
know,
to.
I keep on diverting, trying to
Yeah,
figure
yeah,
that out, man. So
yeah.
I'll talk about myself from now. Okay, my name is Troy. They call me OG because my son has the same name, and people started confusing us as his star rose in the Dallas scene. It was hard to we'd be in the same room. People say Troy, and we both answer. So I went to OG. And the OG for me is when I turned 50 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago. I decided that, I wanted to give the best information, the best game I could, because when I was 30 or 25, I got no good game from men over 50. And these men were normally Vietnam vets, victims of mass incarceration or the war on drugs. And most of them didn't give good advice. And so even if my advice is, I don't know, you might want to ask this person. That's what I made it my life's call to do, is to be a man, a men among men. And one of my jokes I like to say is I'm attracted to men. I like being around other men. I think men are tribal. And when we're young, we're young lions. We're challenging each other. We're fighting. And as we get older, we're iron sharpening iron. And I don't think women understand how we like to get with our boys. They don't really understand it because women are not the same way. They like to kind of, chit chat or whatever. And so for me, man, I love being around men, and I love being around older men specifically. And I I am what I call a futurist. I see what's going to happen a year or two or three ahead from a technical standpoint, and sometimes I'm too far ahead. And what happens to pioneers like me is you get arrows in your back, and the settlers come in and make all the money, right? And
Yeah,
so, I,
yeah,
I
Christopher
look at
Columbus style.
yeah, I look at some of the things that I've set out to do, that I watch other people make million from, and partially because I was there before it matured, and I get bored fast, and I move on to the next thing, right? Um, what else? There was nothing more important to me than fatherhood. Um, it defined my life up until this point, and it's still a big part of me. But when I look back on it, it's because I did it. I was still reactive because I had a child when I was 19. And I decided at that point I was going to be the best father I could. And being the best father I could, in my mind, at that age, was to find a wife and to raise the rest of the kids inside of a nuclear family. Well, I've since come to the understanding that nuclear family was a mistake, because it took us away from our extended family. You grew up in Birmingham, or I grew up in Long Beach. What about that uncle who was not blood related to nobody, right?
Man, yeah,
That family member, the people you chose as family, your aunts and your uncles, and your granny lived a block over, and that community that we had. Once we got a nickel over bill money, we start moving our nuclear family out. And so I really value family, and the family I value are the family that I choose, not
yeah,
so much the family that I was born to. Um, and and so, and not only that, I love to serve. I think that's what I like to do, is I like to help people. I like to serve in the capacity that I understand and that I know. And I think I'm a throwback in certain ways, with the work ethic that I have, but I make it look so easy that people think that it just was given to me. And I really think that whatever spiritual system in the universe really just fuck with me strong, right? And so,
hmm
even and this is gonna sound, it ain't gonna sound weird to you because you've been watching me move, but people think I be making this shit up. So I have a gig. So I have a cousin, who is actually my wife's cousin, that I've known since he was 12. His name is Adam Blackstone. I watched him go from a 12-year-old, upright bass player to Emmy and Grammy award winning musical director. And so I'm his media manager, and we have concerts, private concerts all over the country that his famous friends will show up to. And over the last few years, my proximity to him has gained me that most known unknown thing, because I ran into Grandmaster Flash at the Grammys, and when I see rappers, I'll be like, "Hey, K, what's up, man? What's up?" I'm seeing D Nice and DJs, I'm smacking his hand. But when I see people like Grandmaster Flash, I fan out, and I was like, "Yo, Grandmaster Flash!" And man, he turned around and shook my hand, and you could tell he was embarrassed that he didn't know who I was, so he acted like he knew who I was, and it was the most
Mhm.
awkward thing I'd ever seen in my life. Um, because I'll be at Dr. Dre's house or somewhere, and he'll look at me like, "Nigga, I know you, but I don't want to start the conversation." And I'm not gonna say, "Hey, man, the first time we met, you DJ'd this party, the ROTC ball back in 1984." I'm not gonna fan out like that, because I understand the rules of the game. So I never tell Dre where he knows me from. But every time he see me, he point at me like, "Nigga, I know you, and we're gonna have this conversation one day."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
back to what I was telling you, I get a call from Adam. We have a gig, another concert, November 18th in New York City. Okay, my son is on a cruise. We know that. Okay, this cruise is all up and down Greece and places I never heard of. Right. Well, they do a 16-day one-way cruise. They go from Greece to Spain to New York City, and he gets to New York on what day? The 17th of November. So the day before the concert, my son ports, and I'm gonna get to see him, right? And that's just the power of who I am and all these systems that line up. I don't even know, it's above me, man. I don't know how it happens. So much so, like, Birmingham's finest, Ricky Smiley. I worked for him for 7 years. He never tours on the East Coast because he is a Southern comic. His comedy is funny to people who grew up in the black culture from a 6 or 7 state area: Florida, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, right? It is not funny in California. It is not funny in, like, Maine.
Yeah.
The
Right.
day my son goes back to school, we have to take him. He's in school in Philadelphia, and his best friend lives in DC. Why did we have a show in DC the first day, the next day in Philadelphia? And I've never seen Ricky go back to Philadelphia, but except for the day I took my son home. Not only that, the day my daughter left college in Nashville, I'm on tour with Ricky Smiley. They need someone to drive the merch from Atlanta back to Dallas in a van. I volunteer, and I just drive up to, we have a show in Nashville. I pick up my daughter, and I drive that van back to Texas, right? And so I have hundreds of examples of how things just lined up for me. Earthquake was my one of my best friends in the military. We were both in the Air Force, stationed at Eglin Air Force Base. And he told me, "Hey, man, Troy, you ought to move to Atlanta, man." He said, "The records ain't yours." I was a DJ. These jokes is mine. So I would go up there and see him. And next thing I know, he's a big time comedian. He was a personal friend of mine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My cousin on my mama's side is a guy named Bob Kersey. No one has won more gold medals as a coach in Olympic history than Bob Kersey. People know his wife is Jackie Joyner Kersey. So I grew up with Jackie Joyner Kersey. When I met Jackie Joyner Kersey, she was a basketball player at UCLA before the WNBA existed. And so people wonder how I walk in these circles. It's because, man, the universe or whatever is lining it up for me, and I just show up, man, with a willingness to take advantage of it. And so uh, people say I'm lucky, and I say luck is when opportunity and preparation meet, and I'm just prepared to be in the spaces that I'm in. And as I go into this season now, where the kids are not around, because let me tell you something. I know I'll be rambling. I
No,
did a
man. Look,
gig.
that's the thing. Well, you done too much to talk in a straight line. So ramble, man. Like I want you to run your mouth.
Okay, so I used to work for a guy named Shannon Briggs. He was a heavyweight champion, two-time heavyweight champion, the only heavyweight champion with asthma. And I went to Miami to do a ESPN special behind the scenes with one of his boxers, and I was gone for 12 days or 2 weeks. I get a call from my son's band teacher. He was in junior high. He's like, hey man, everything all right at home? I was like, what? Like, I don't know this teacher like that. He said, well, I pulled your son out. He was being very disruptive in class. He's the most talented person in class. So how the class goes, how he goes is how the class goes. I pulled him out in the hallway and said, what's going on? And he broke down in tears and said, my dad's been gone for 2 weeks. He was in the 7th grade. I came home and vowed not to leave that long ever until he was out of high school. Not a month later, I started working for Ricky Smiley. I did a project for someone. They said, hey, can you do this? When social media was new. They gave me a 3-month contract. I outperformed it. And then I went to one Ricky Smiley show. I did some video behind the scenes. And people said, when'd you do that? I said, I did it just now. And from the time that 7th grade to my son graduated high school, I took him to school every day. Right? Even when he had his own driver's license. That was our time together, because Ricky was a radio DJ who had to be in Atlanta or in Birmingham Monday through Friday, and we can only tour on the weekends. So sometimes I take my son with me. And so I've been able to create a career that allowed me to spend time with my family, because what I realized working with some of these big names like Fred Hammond, Deion Sanders, Brady James, Ricky Smiley, is that they are not available to their family. And they say they're doing it for their family, right? And they're buying these big houses to send them on vacation, put them in the best schools. But all the kids want is time. Kids spell money T-I-M-E, right?
Yeah.
And, so for the last, 15 years, what's most rewarding now is I don't have to be available for my children. They become available to me. And what I mean by that is, you asked me to talk about what I've done this year. I think it's still 2020. Yeah. So this year I had the opportunity to do the behind the scenes at the Super Bowl, and I had a ticket to the Super Bowl. And,
break down what you did at the Super Bowl, because a lot of people are gonna hear that and think that you was holding cable or either dragging bags or something.
So if anybody Googles Adam Blackstone, they'll know that he was the musical director for the halftime show with Dr. Dre, Snoop, Kendrick Lamar, 50 Cent, Mary J. Blige, and that iconic halftime show. So what my job was to do was to support him in all of his marketing efforts, media-wise, and also create the behind-the-scenes footage that we would share now and license in the future. And so I went to probably 25 rehearsals, including some at Dr. Dre's house. And I was the guy who documented that process. And I had a ticket to the game. Now, let's put a pin right there. I want to back up because I don't want anybody to miss this point. In 2020, my client cousin did the Super Bowl for Shakira and J-Lo in Miami. Okay? And I was slated to do that. And I was supposed to go on a particular day, but he called me and said, hey, man, I need you here tomorrow because we're about to go in this bubble right quick. And, there's not going to be any cameras allowed. But I was already on another gig in California, so I sent a crew out there. Okay? And so right after that, I came home and just be quite frank, my wife was like, hey, well, you don't need to go to the Super Bowl now. The work is already done. And I was like, you know what, you're right. So I didn't go to the Super Bowl. That was in January or like February. The next week, I happened to be in, next month, I happened to be in Chicago, and I did the All-Star game. This is when Kobe Bryant had just passed. So I'm at the United Center in Chicago, and I'm leaving like the day before the game because I'm coming back for what's that called? A Valentine's party that I'm DJing, and I'm only DJing it because I want Fred Hammond to see me as a DJ, not as a video guy, because Fred Hammond was coming to this party. So I left. I didn't go to the game. That was February. I turn on the TV on Sunday. Guess where Fred Hammond is? Fred Hammond's at the All-Star game where I should have been. And then in March, the whole world was shut down. So here in 2020, I could have did the Super Bowl and the NBA All-Star game, and I didn't do it because I thought there would always be another one. And then in 2020, we didn't know if we'd ever have it again. So I vowed the next time I had the opportunity, I was going to do it. Well, when it came time to do it, I didn't have a ticket for my son to the game, and we're both football fans. And man, I felt really bad. So I took him to California with me, and I'm really agonizing over this. And my son, who was 22 at the time, or 23, that was earlier this year, he looked at me and said, "Dad, it is your turn. Go ahead and go to the Super Bowl." He didn't feel a kind of way. You know what I'm saying? And it freed me up because I felt the kind of way, because who wouldn't want to take their son to the Super Bowl? Who wouldn't want to have their son, share this victory? He said, "Dad, I'll be playing in the Super Bowl one day. This is your time. You go ahead and go." So did that. The next month we did the Oscars on the Will Smith slap. We did the Oscars. Yeah, and then what is it we done this year? Then we've done the legacy events, the concerts, the pop-up concerts that people like Dr. Dre show up to, or Eric Benet has been there, Anthony Hamilton, and man, it's really picking up because I don't have to come back to the kids. Don't need me, and my daughter's traveling for her business. My oldest daughter is doing well in her career, and my son is traveling the world. And so it's allowed me to really intentionally put my efforts and energy into being in these spaces. And one thing that I've realized, Vic, about being off the camera is people are trying to figure out who I am in the industry. And so I can go talk to the Showtime people. I go up on the stage. If Adam's up there, I'm talking to the Busta Rhymes. And so now I'm able to take meetings that a cameraman can't take.
Yeah.
So what I realize in Hollywood is we don't know who Spike Lee's cameraman is. We don't know who Steven Spielberg's cameraman is. The cameraman is the low man on the totem pole. He the help. Right?
Right.
And so by not being off the camera, I'm able to network more and find other opportunities don't involve labor. Because I think as Black people, as Black men, we've been taught to value labor too much, right? Right? It's good to have a trade. It's good to do labor, right? But it's better to be the person paying the person who's doing the labor. It's better to be that person. Who is that person?
Yeah.
And so getting out of the technician phase that I've been in for so long, and becoming more of the director and more of the person, the facilitator, or the person who gets the check and then distributes it to the help. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Look,
so that's who I am, man.
Yeah, that's why the logistics piece is so key, because you have an additional skill that you went back to school for that enhances something that you already got access to. So now you know how to use it better,
Hey, man, I'm glad you said it like that. So, and and if I told you I had it all figured out, I'm coming into a space where I don't have any peers, right? Because I even look at my own parents who have been married over 50 years, right? But they never stopped raising children. In fact, they raised my oldest daughter for a couple of years. They raised two of my brother's kids. And God bless my sister. She lives at the guest house in my parents' home, and her 14-year-old and 11-year-old are there. So my parents have always had children. They never got to the point, and it's true for the Black family. How many of us I was raised by my grandmother. How many of us are in the Black community are raised by our grandparents? And a lot of us are. And so I don't have any kids to raise, right? Meaning I don't have any dependents. And for the first time since I've been a husband or a father since I was 19. For the first time, I can, of course, my as a husband. And let's talk to the married people. And this is what a lot of old married men don't talk about. And I'm gonna put myself in the old married man catalog because I've been married 3 decades. Love is probably, it's a given. It might be 20% of what marriage is, right? Love comes and goes. It's an emotion. You're not looking each other in the eye and skipping and holding hands and shit. there's real life that takes place. There's things like taxes and insurance and birth and death. Marriage at this level, in my opinion, is about duty, right?
Duty.
And
Yep.
so I can't cheat on my wife. That's the switch I put in my mind about 15 years ago was I can only cheat on myself, right? Because it really had nothing to do with her. If I don't believe in monogamy. I believe monogamy is a gift. And do I choose to give this gift to this person, right? And when I reposition it that way, I didn't have to fight nature. Nature is nature. Nature's gonna do what it do, right? But if I say, hey, look, not only am I'm gonna give this woman this gift, so it means it has nothing to do with her, right? So no matter how she's treating me, what do I say? Who do I say I am for me? And man, you wouldn't believe how much easier it makes to navigate life when you take responsibility for your gift. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
This is what
Take
I'm giving
responsibility
you.
for your gift.
Yeah, this is what I'm giving to you. Like, so when you give a gift to somebody at Christmas or on their birthday, you don't put the conditions on it after you've given it to them. If they, if you're having kids, you give them something on December 25th, and by damn January 17th, the shit's broken and in the trash.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
For real.
And so marriage is less about, for me, it's less about, at this point, it's about love and happiness, right? Because that's what the R&B singers sing. But name me a happily married R&B singer or a successful, the only person I can think about is Anita Baker. You know what I'm saying? Like who is singing about this shit who has a functional relationship? None of them, right?
None of them.
And so let's talk about Jodeci. Forever My Lady. They wrote them songs when they were 16 years old and recorded them when they was 20. What do they know? Right? And at this level, I know it's about legacy. It's about what are you leaving when you're gone, because you're closer to the end than you are to the beginning. And I also know that divorce should always be an option. Anytime you have a lifetime appointment, you get a Clarence Thomas in this bitch. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so anytime you see football players operate better on contract years. And so I've told my wife many a time, and I expect her to do the same thing. When I'm not performing up to the standards that we've set, we need to have a contract review. And I believe that you should renew your marriage license every 10 years and be able to opt out because things change, right? And so what happens is people get to a point where they get content. And look, divorce is mostly started by women because they'll blow it up. Men will adjust because we're you say men have code, and we want to maintain our word, and we want to be consistent with what we said we were going to do, even if it doesn't serve us to a point. And so I don't know why I talked about that, but I will say that for those who are religious on here, I just heard something that changed my perspective on just marriage for younger people. See, I tell people I fall under the old rules. I was born in '68. Getting to the next level included having a wife. You know what I'm saying? That was what we did. But he said, man, there is no God in marriage. And to test that out, let that shit fall apart. And you're not going to your pastor. He's powerless. You're going to the state. You have a contract with the state. And they don't care what religion you are. They're going to tear you a new asshole based on the statutes of the state that you got married in. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And so what we have to do in these families is realize that I believe that we should really work on keeping the Black family together as best we can. But there are systems that separate the fathers from the family and pit the mothers against the fathers. And we have to do everything in our power to combat that. And part of that is having an understanding of what your roles and responsibilities and your duties are inside of that marriage. And if monogamy is part of that, you're gonna have to, take your pants down. You know what I'm saying?
If for real.
If providing is part of that, you got to get your work on. And so I believe people should have, the things that make it work for them. But the way I got married and the rules I got married on do not work today. So that's why I don't give marital advice from perspective of a man who's been married almost 3 decades.
Right, man. I got a video of your work I want to play in a minute. That's about five
Mm-hmm.
minutes.
Go ahead.
And um it's a video that you produced for Adam Blackstone, and I'm gonna let this run for a second, and then we're gonna wrap up and let you talk about it a little bit, what I'm saying, and go from there.
That'll work.
So the 2021 Super Bowl, this year's Super Bowl, I was blessed to be producing the Star Spangled Banner for the pre-show of the game. I wanted to show this moment as a unifying piece. Thankfully, the NFL was definitely down with it as well. So my approach to arranging the Star Spangled Banner, first of all, it's one of the hardest songs to sing because of where the register is. So I found a key that was comfortable for both having a male voice and a female voice on it. So when I was approached by Jesse Collins and Rock Nation about who should sing, we landed on my good buddy Eric Church and my little sister Jasmine. So them having contrasting styles, of course. Eric is a country artist. Jasmine is this R&B soul artist. I really wanted to think about a concept that brought those two worlds together while also unifying us as a people. So once I put the piano down, I grabbed my bass and I put a bass part down. I then called my brother Clay Sears.
So Adam and I have been friends for a pretty long time now. I really like that I have a personal relationship, a personal friendship with him that goes outside of music. What Adam does, who he is, how he approaches music, how he approaches people as a person who works for him, with him. My respect, my admiration is
to the bridge, and I wanted to bring the complete rhythm section in and begin that pulse.
So I'm gonna pause right here, man, because I want you to be able to capture about like some of the people that you've already filmed, and like what kind of relationships you got with them that you feel confident enough speaking and sharing about, because
Yeah.
you in a good circle, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you are part of the growth of that circle, Uh,
Yeah.
so what's your responsibility to your network?
So it's funny, man, because it's really like not in a disrespectful way. It's kind of like the same approach I had with my children, right? And so Adam Blackstone is 14 years younger than me, so I'm the big cousin. And the hardest part with working with him early was he didn't know how to give me direction, because in the Black community we talk about hierarchy is the way we relate to people. But when I told him I was there to serve him, it made a shift, right? And I have to be okay. Like, I've been telling him to do what we just did in there since 2009, actually 2007. But it took him seeing Diddy doing it. It took him seeing others do it, because some people need evidence. Because at his level, you can't make big mistakes, right?
No.
And I understand it. Like, there's a whole class I could teach on how to move in celebrity circles, right? And so you can't, things if you've never seen done before, a lot of times it's hard to implement.
Can't replicate it.
Yeah, and it's at risk of, messing it up for everybody. And so I have to be okay with giving him and others the game, and them not believing or trusting in it or seeing it or understanding it for many, many, many years later, right? And so being able to manage that as the big cousin who works for the little cousin, and making him understand it. In this space, he's the general and I'm the private, or I'm the sergeant, or I'm the, what my boy calls, he says, I'm the consigliere. I'm a trusted advisor who exists outside of the main structure. And so I could come in and say, hey, this, you gotta be looking this, and this. And on the celebrity side, that is the part. Like even working with someone like Ricky Smiley or Fred Hammond, these guys, particularly Fred Hammond, he's a legend. And so what I would do is I would feed him an idea to the side. I would never bring it out in public. And then I would let him present it to his team like it was his idea. And I was okay with that, right? A lot of people want credit, right? Dick Cheney, I don't want to have to be up front. I want to be Robin. Let Batman go out there and take the bullets. Let me be over here because ain't nobody looking for me. And for me, I've always, and this is the transition I'm making, I've always been the side man or the guy in the back. And I find comfort in that because no one is attacking that person, right? But I'm coming out, I'm coming out more and more just because, I think it's time. I think I put the work, I know I put the work in. And yeah, so that's how it is working with someone like a celebrity. It's like you have to plug it. Oh, Deion Sanders. I got videos I'm gonna share with you of Deion Sanders thanking me for teaching him social media and how these cameras work. And now watch what he's doing at Jackson State. I watch what he's doing at with Barstool. I know some of his camera people, and that's what I was doing. That's what I introduced to Deion's game, and he thanks me for it. But the thing about Prime, we don't work together now, not because he doesn't like me. Prime turns pages really fast, and whoever's on the page, that's who you with. If you can put, that's who you with. If you can put yourself in a position to be like, I look at his coaching staff, I know a great percentage of them because they were the same ones who were teaching our kids in Little League. I spent a lot of time with Prime, and every time I see him, we stop and we talk. But I was not in a position to follow him to Jackson State. Not because anything other than he needed someone who was 20 years younger. And that's one thing I understand. Okay, if we're talking about values, I know how to put younger people in position and say, like, right now we have a camera crew that we use in LA with Adam Blackstone, who is way better than me on the video side, but not the logistics and business side. You know what I'm saying? Or direction side. And so I manage crews of people who are in their 30s because this is a young man's game. They just need a little bit of direction. And so back to Prime, what Prime is doing, he hadn't done anything to surprise me yet because I've been the guy before that was shooting that and showing him. And so then he was able to take that and say, hey, man, do it this way, do it this way. And I'm going to post those testimonials because I think people forget. Prime ain't forgot, and the people who know ain't forgot. And a lot of times, I'm not looking for outside validation or credit either. But it's starting to come to the point where you start seeing some of these programs. They're like, yeah, man, you might know this person, but do you know OG? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The people who know. You know what I'm saying? The people who know.
If you know, you know. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
That's really what it comes down to. And that's kind of like the turning point where you're really trying to monetize the work that you've all put in. Like when it comes down to the relationships you establish from trading work with people and you know what I'm saying, the significant places of influence, places that you need to access to grow your brand. You have to submit to what they have going on and get, like you said, on their sheet of music in order to be on the page when your opportunity, you know what I'm saying, it comes. Because if you stay ready, you ain't got to get ready, right?
Yeah. And then, the world is shrunk. It's easy to get from the East Coast to the West Coast. There's two things. There's benefits and non-benefits of living in Dallas. The benefit is, I could be on the East or West Coast in 3 hours, right? And trust me, I've done it before. Like, hey man, can you be out here tomorrow? Okay, yeah, I'm in there, right? And it's not, more than $300 or $400.
Right.
The lack of the downside of living in Dallas, and that's why I encourage my kids to get out of Dallas, is Dallas is a one artist down. No artist has ever made it out of Dallas. Has got popular in Dallas. You got Erykah Badu, who went off to Grambling. She got popular on the East Coast, and she happened to be from Dallas, right? And then you got the DOC, who Dr. Dre and them found on tour with the Feel Out Fresh group and took him to LA. And he got, he became DOC in LA. And so when you have a city with all this talent, but you don't have any industry, you could be the big man in Dallas, and that don't mean nothing. That means you're making a couple $100,000, right? Whereas you could be on the 10th rung in LA, New York, or Atlanta, and that could be millions. And so,
Yeah.
I've always wanted to leave this city. But there's certain things that keep you here. Like for me, the real estate, this price, good.
Man,
Compared
look,
to LA or New York,
absolutely.
it's easier
Understood.
to live here. And, but at the same time, it's easy to get out. And if I was a young man, I got, when I say 55, I think I've redefined. I'm part of this generation that, when I'm out and we talking shit and the ladies is around, and I tell them I'll be 55 in January, they all stop. Like, no way you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because we're still relevant, still out here getting it. But at the same time, I don't want to be the old dude dressing young, trying to be cool,
look.
running with young women. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
I like old people things like rest. You know what I'm saying?
Yo, hey, that is a great note to transition. Like, I want to get into our final thoughts, but before I get there, I want to talk to the people that's already following the platform. Hey, tomorrow, Wednesday, on the Uncle Junior Network, we have Elevated Dialogue. Okay, we are focused on mentoring young men. Tomorrow's episode is it's about what type of relationship works for you. So we're gonna get down in the details on that. Like some people are gonna be into like the 50-50 discussion. It's gonna cover a wide range of topics, stuff that we've already discussed before, probably, but we want to have a more concise discussion about it, like along the same lines of what we're talking about tonight, is being able to pivot with the information in the conversation itself, right? So it's going to come down to, relationship styles, age gap dating, 50-50 marriage relationship, traditional relationship. So out of those four categories, we'll be able to have a wide ranging discussion, about what we think about relationships in our current culture. What else?
I got an idea about that part. I want to just share a little bit. I noticed that attorneys marry attorneys and doctors marry doctors. And poor people marry poor people, right?
Very true.
and poor people marry from the neck down, and rich people marry from the neck up.
Oh man.
And so a lot of times your conversations are going to be limited based on where people are at in that continuum. I married a woman who had great earning potential. So when we decided that she was going to go from a stay-at-home wife to a earner, it was not a problem that I paid all the bills for 20 years. You know what I'm saying? It was unit, but she was not someone who needed to. She sacrificed her career for the family. She was not someone who needed savings. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I think a lot of people, a lot of women, they just get tired of working. And they want to be with a rich person or a person who of means. But people of means attract other people with means, or should. You know what I'm saying? So that's
we talk about being useful and being being of service, and yes. All of that fits into that whole dynamic, which is why that conversation is going to evolve and unwrap very, very well, because when you having it amongst people that's having a discussion from a healthy place, we will be able to look at it from multiple perspectives, from multiple people.
Right.
So
right.
I hope you can jump in on that conversation tomorrow, but I think that it's in conflict with your timeline. But you're more than welcome to to come in and speak from your perspective on that too. So to everybody that's paying attention, tomorrow, tune in for Elevated Dialogue. It's on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Uncle Junior Network. You'll be able to click in the caption and see the last show that was done, and there's a link for the YouTube channel for Elevated Dialogue. So check that in the caption too. I also put it over here in the chat. What else do we need to discuss before I get out of here, man? Hey, just get the
Oh,
people your final thoughts, and I'll let you go, man, because I know it's past your
final thought,
bedtime.
man. Yeah, final thought, man. Couple things. One, I appreciate you taking me from Georgetown to Dallas. So that's I'm pulling up to the crib, so this is perfect timing. I started this call in Georgetown, Texas, right?
Yeah,
But the picture that I have, you have up, with my son and me, 20 years apart, or roughly 20 years apart, probably 17 years apart. Uh, I love watch taking pictures like that because back in the day, not everyone had cameras around, right? Um, Now, it can be common, but just looking at that growth, you know what I'm saying? My favorite picture is the one on the left, and we still have that level of love and respect for each other because I recognize his humanity, and whoever he decides to marry, if he decides to get married, is not going to get a broken man who has to recover from his childhood. But inside of that, the difficulty may be is that a lot of women are not raised to be with a man who's whole. They're raised to come in and raise a man, and that's going to be problematic. And the last thing I'll say is a lot of people talk about iron sharpening iron, um, but a lot of people who say that aren't built from iron. You know what I'm saying?
nope.
They got that good aluminum. And so I appreciate the brothers you've introduced me to, like Garfield and just your network. And I see the similarities in our networks. And I believe that being an entrepreneur and being a pioneer in a lot of different spaces is often very lonely. And so these conversations are so easy to me. Talking for you to over 2.5 hours, I imagine, is so easy because I don't have anyone to talk to. I'm mostly peerless, and I value these networks. And I absolutely hate that I had to miss the uncle's trip. And
Man,
I value that the woman in your life put that together, and the men in your life showed up for it. And I think it's so necessary that men get together like they used to do in the tribes, and pull the young men to the side. And I remember reading a book by Geronimo Pratt, Black Panther. He said in Louisiana they pulled him to the side and said, "Hey, you're going to be the one that goes to the military, or you're going to be the one who goes to college." And the men were helping guide the men on what they were going to do, rather than letting life guide them and blow them wherever the wind blew. So that'd be my last thing to say before I pull up to the house.
man, I appreciate it. I look to you as as a father figure, what I'm saying, somebody that's older than me that I can speak to the same way. You got the
With your
same,
dad's birthday.
well, you got my dad's birthday. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know another way for me to capture how important you are to me in my life. Um, and I wanted to give you a chance to, so I can give you your roses. You know what I'm saying? Because we do a lot of the same stuff, but you do it at a much higher level, and where you can. I respect your input about what I need to do. And one of the things you told me was that, Vic, you just need to turn it on and talk,
Be
and
Vic.
you don't need to be perfect. They just need to see you. And I never overlooked that. Um, you have been in spaces for me where there wasn't room for anyone else but you. You know what I'm saying? And like
Gotcha.
I was in Afghanistan, and we were trading information and coaching each other, giving each other information that helps us improve our own households and takes care of our own families and networks and stuff. So
Yeah.
uh,
On Messenger.
yeah, on Messenger, you know what I'm saying? Like, yo, we've seen it. We've seen it materialize. We bumped into each other in Dallas. You know what I'm saying, by accident a couple times, and then you know what
Yeah.
I'm saying. And then what happens when we're actually intentional? You know what I'm saying. So um, I wanted to throw my hat in the ring and becoming more intentional, like you said, turn it on and talk. So I figure, hey, I might as well call you. You know what I'm saying? Not in a negative sense, but what a better time. You know what I'm saying? Because it just shows you, even in proximity, we don't live far from each other, but it's hard for us to connect physically sometimes because
Yeah.
of our existing obligations. But you make time. You know what I'm saying? You make time for reciprocal relationships that make you better. So I appreciate you taking time to make me better. You know what I'm saying? Amongst other things that you got as a priority. And you know what I'm saying, I will always return that energy, you know what I'm saying, and be of service to you, you know what I'm saying, when the opportunity presents, man. So I just want to tell you I love you, you know what I'm saying. Thank you. I'm glad you got home safely. I'm glad you was able to participate, and we'll be catching up soon, I'm sure, man.
Yeah, and I love you too, man. I appreciate you.
Yes,
And man,
sir.
you stay up and keep on being Vic, man. Give him that Vic.
Indeed. Hey, to everybody else that took time to watch the broadcast tonight, thank you for showing up. Uh, Go ahead and like, subscribe, and follow the Accountable Masculinity platform on YouTube. Um, Inbox me for any other topics you'd like to have discussed, and if you're interested in being on the show and being featured on the Accountable Masculinity Spotlight, hit me up. Till then, I'm out.
All right, we out.